everyone, and welcome to episode 17 of the Best You, a coaching podcast. It's Gary here again, and thank you very, very much for taking the time to join me on this episode. I hope you're doing great and investing in whatever growth work it is you've committed to getting yourself closer to the best version of you. I wanted to start this week by just kind of acknowledging or explaining, maybe I guess is probably a better word, that I'm constantly trying to improve. Every single day I'm looking for the lessons, I'm looking for the learnings, I'm looking for the growth opportunities, and that's one of the reasons that I do this podcast, and I hope that's one of the reasons that you are listening. And I'm constantly looking for ways to provide you value, and that means considering this podcast and how I can tweak it to make it better, and just always looking for those little incremental improvements that gives us the best opportunity to enjoy and benefit from our time together. And as I'd mentioned last time, the podcasts are very, and the blogs of course, are very much a push communication. It's I put that information out there and then you do with it what you will, and it's difficult to know if it's actually working or not, if it's actually providing benefit to the folks that are listening, which is you, of course. And as I mentioned, I don't get a lot of feedback, and I think that kind of goes with the territory. So I'm kind of starting with a little bit of an ask here. If you have any feedback at all, and remember that for sure Apple Podcasts has an ability to provide feedback, and if you go into if you actually open an episode in the Apple Podcasts app, there's a wee part at the top that says send us a text message, and if you do that, it comes literally straight to me, and I'll get an opportunity. So if it's a thumbs up or a thumbs down, or did you consider, or you overdid this or you underdid that, or something like that, would be terrific, because I just want to make this a valuable use of your time, and I don't want it to create any eye rolls or any huffs or puffs, or worse still, any opportunity for you to say, I'm never going to listen to that guy ever again. So that's just a wee bit of a caveat. And the reason I mention that is that what you can expect in this episode is we're going to work through the recent blog like I typically do, and just give you a bit of a verbal overview of things that are just a wee bit easier to say in person rather than over text. And the next part after that is where I'm actually, I guess it's probably the first part, because it comes up before the blog review, is that I've made some tweaks, and I've not really ever fully been at peace with the what have I been up to section that comes immediately after this part, and I know I have explained it on a couple of the recent pods, that it's to kind of explain my growth journey, it's to keep me accountable and hopefully inspire you to say, I should be doing a little bit more of that, and kind of getting a little bit of kind of inspiration from that. But upon reflection, I'm going to tweak that to what have I learned since the last time we chatted, essentially, and it will focus. The focus will genuinely just be on growth and learning, and some of the content might be the same as it was on the what have I been up to, which was the previous version, but I wanted to challenge myself and to challenge you, in fact, on the actual learnings that we're absorbing on a daily basis, and what the meaning of the experiences that we've experienced have been. So I did, and where this came from was I did a training class earlier in the week where we had to commit to making one discernible change in something that we were doing that was going to help with our own growth, and I committed to making this change this week, and I had the epiphany just a wee bit earlier in the week where I thought, that's what I'm missing, that's what I need to give myself the opportunity to explain the actual learnings in and of itself. And I'll tell you actually where it came from. I was chatting with my son, I can't remember, a couple of weeks back, and I said, how was your day? What was the best part of your day? Every single day, especially when he's in school. And I said, how's your day? Yeah, same as every other day. I said, what did you learn? Nothing. And I said, you learned nothing? He says, yes. And I says, that's literally impossible. It's literally impossible that you can go to school for a full day and learn literally zero. and he's 15, so he's kind of like, oh, yeah, I learned nothing. And okay, so then I thought I need to help him change his mindset and embrace and absorb the learnings that are around him. And then that just came to manifest itself into me saying, that would be a bit of a better idea to focus that section on that. And what I'm going to do, I did talk about this on the last episode. I don't have a book report to do, but I'd like to just give a bit of a masterclass report on a recent masterclass. I've subscribed to the Masterclass app or system or solution, whatever they call it, and I did one quite some time ago actually, as I was trying to just hone in on my writing, and it was by Malcolm Gladwell. So I'll provide a wee bit of an overview of that, just to give you a little bit of variety in terms of what it is that you are listening to. So on to what have I learned since the last time that we chatted. So I am subscribed, I think I've mentioned this kind of sporadically, or sprinkled these references in on previous pods, but I'm subscribed to the Growth Day app and the Growth Day community, which is run by Brendan Burchard, and I'm also subscribed to the Mastermind community, which is Tony Robbins, Dean Graziosi, and team. So I'll give you a wee bit of an overview of what I've been learning since those. The kind of theme for the Growth Day in this month is public speaking and communication mastery, and just basically attending some classes there that talk about your presence, how to create a talk, how to structure a talk, how to prepare, and preps and reps they call it, how to prepare and practice essentially, and aligning the lessons that you want people to get from your talk with the stories that you will tell that will exacerbate and enhance those lessons, managing the transitions in your talks, and providing yourself with safety nets within the talks as well. Should something go wrong, should you blank, should the technology not work, should a transition kind of fall flat, you have something that gives yourself that opportunity to breathe, to kind of collect yourself and move on. So if I'm just going to repeat that quickly. If you're doing anything that involves any sort of talk, and you're kind of basically carte blanche, the de facto person that has to completely create the talk, think about how you want to present yourself. Create, the process of creating it is giving yourself that structure, preparing, practicing, aligning the lessons that you want your audience to have with the stories that you will tell to enhance those learnings. Manage your transitions between stories, between topics, between methodologies, whatever it is the content is of your talk is going to provide, and then give yourself an opportunity to manage the safety nets as well. So hopefully that provides a wee bit of an overview of that. There's lots more information, of course, in the lessons, but these are the main takeaways. And a theme that I just kind of finished there, actually. I started a class quite some time ago, but it was on holistic health and basically, fitness, but whole body fitness, whole being fitness, mental fitness, emotional fitness, physical, spiritual, social fitness, and really just asking yourself, do you have the energy? Do you have the strength? Do you have the skill? Do you have the adaptability that you need to serve the way that you want to serve in each of those areas, and each of those areas being mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, and social, but concentrating on the energy and the strength and the skill and the adaptability? And if the answer is yes, then fantastic, you can go forward and serve in the way that you're trying to serve as you live your life. If the answer to any of these is no, I actually don't have the energy, I actually don't have the strength, I really don't even know where I would start in terms of the skill set or the adaptability to be able to do what needs to be done, then at least you've got information in and of itself to be able to take that information and do something with it. Go on a course, start to figure out, why your energy is depleted, figuring out other areas of growth that you would need to concentrate your time and efforts on to get better at those. And he mentions, this was actually a Brendan Burchard talk, I think it was like a 3-hour talk actually, it was really good, and the 10 enemies to your fitness, and they all started with S. I won't mention all 10, but it was sleep, satiation is the way that I would say it because I'm foreign, but he's kind of said satiation because he's American. Stress, superiority, and there's another 10. If you're genuinely interested in the enemies to your fitness, please do let me know, and I would be happy to cover them in a bit more detail going forward. This is just a bit of an overview. And there's also 5 fitness amplifiers, and that's harder workouts. Like if you work out, that's fantastic, but give yourself harder ones once or twice a week. You're concentrating on your brain health and what you have to do to enhance the brain health that you have existing, and it kind of talks a little bit about supplements and different techniques to be able to do that. Daily prioritized action, taking action that's a priority for you on a specific topic to make sure that you're getting better at something on a daily basis. Managing your self-talk, and he calls it ultra friends, but basically surrounding yourself with people that build you up and enhance you rather than tear you down and deplete you at the same time. So that was my growth year learnings on Mastermind. I did sign up for a new action-oriented course, which comes with a technical platform and some success coaching and some deeper learnings through ongoing classes and such, and it's called Mastermind Business Academy. And I did think about it for about a month or so as to, is that the right thing to invest my time in? But the main thing for this, for me, is it's all focused on action, like taking more action, and also the technical platform that I'm able to host my courses and have you sign up for my courses, have the automated emails and such, and be able to accept payment through that as well. So things that I've been concentrating my time on in the early stages, I just signed up for this, I think it's probably just literally about a week ago, is amplifying my marketing, crafting teaching points that matter to my clients or potential clients, and creating a true following, super fans as they had called it, people that would shout your name from the rooftops, people that would say nice things about you even when you're not in the room. And recently we've been concentrating on group coaching techniques, so some of it's brushing up on knowledge and skills that I already have, but it's, as I say, it's very, very focused on action. So what that might manifest itself into is you might see me being a bit more active on social media. I'm considering doing a 30-day challenge around about a number of themes that I've been preparing some topics about, and I might do these live on LinkedIn as I move forward, or maybe create a YouTube channel or something. I'm not 100% sure, but you'll see some more action in some way, shape or form as we move forward. Now, one other epiphany I had, I mentioned the epiphany about this particular section, I had another epiphany that I was kind of dragging myself a little bit on my blockers course that I've been mentioning now and again. I thought that I would have that finished probably about a couple of months ago, if I'm being really honest, and I wouldn't say I was procrastinating or stalling, but the progress wasn't where it should be. I've been stuck at around about 75% completion for quite some time, and I just came to the epiphany that I'm just not in love with the course. I'm in love with the idea of the course and the flow and the main teaching points or the main learning points and growth points within it, but I just wasn't absolutely as much in love with it latterly as I was in the beginning. So I had to spend some time basically reflecting on why that was. So that meant going through the course material, trying to kind of present it in different ways, think about it in different ways, take a walk, give myself a wee bit of a breather, not be too immersed in it and such. And what I've come to the conclusion of my original version, which was never going to be the final version anyway, is just too crammed full of stuff, if you understand what I mean. And what I was trying to do is basically give you absolutely everything. So I'll follow the core course curriculum, of course, and then I'm going to give you a whole bunch of value add stuff that you'll go away thinking, man, I got exactly what I needed, and then a whole bunch of other stuff. I overdid it, and I think it's just going to be, it would just be too overwhelming, and it would end up diluting the main core and the main intent of the course in the first place, which is to help you identify and remove or reduce the blockers that are holding you back, both inner and outer blockers, or internal or external blockers. So my plan now is I'm literally doing this, almost as we speak. I'm taking a break to record this pod, of course, but my main plan now is to pare it back for more appropriate flow, more appropriate ability to consume the messaging, and of course, most important is to ensure that the learnings that are intended to be gained from this course will actually genuinely be gained. So that's been quite good. Taken a long time to get here, but I'm back in love with it again, you'll be delighted to hear, and we'll get an opportunity to get that course out here fairly shortly, I'm hoping. I also did an interview with ex-Glasgow Rangers Football Club chairman David Holmes, and he published a book about his time in helping Rangers revolutionise themselves as a football club back in the mid to late 1980s. So it was an honour and a privilege to be able to get to meet this man after knowing who he is for basically almost my whole life, quite honestly, quite frankly. And we had the interview at the time of recording, the interview was actually yesterday, but the reason I mentioned that is it gave me an opportunity to just rededicate myself to understanding the process of and the preparation that goes into preparing for an interview. As you know, if you're a follower of mine, all the podcasts I do are me on my own, and I know that other more successful pods have guests on, and there's a bit of banter and dynamic between the speaker and the interviewer, and it just gives you a bit more variety and a bit more entertainment. I purposely have done this singularly for this point, to build up a bit of a base, to hone my craft a wee bit, and then see what happens from there. I'm not closed or open to anything in the future, but just reframing a bit. I did a number of Rangers interviews probably about 3 years ago. I think maybe about 5 or 6 or 10 or something like that. I can't remember the exact number, but it just gave me a bit of a chance to have a bit of a refresher on the logistics, on the technical setup, on backup planning and such, and learned a wee bit more about his story, of course, in the context of what that means to the team that I love and adore. This is not my Rangers podcast. My Rangers podcast is another one. Search for Narsa Communication on your favourite podcast platform, and you'll get to hear all about that there. But it was good to kind of refresh myself on the skills and really just get myself the opportunity to not just fly solo. It ended up being an interview with him and the reporter that did a lot of the writing for him as well. So it was a bit of a kind of trifecta there, and it was very, very good, and we'll get that interview published on our podcast channels over there, and hopefully people will enjoy that. Books that I have on the go: Still Coaching for Performance by Sir John Whitmore, and Still Born to Run by Bruce Springsteen. I might talk about them at some point in the future. So on to actual content here, and a summary that you can listen to in terms of blog number 18, which was, the full title is 7 Steps to Improve Your Judgment. And judgment to me is a funny thing, and it's something that's at the centre of almost everything, maybe actually everything that we do. And we could be talking about here your own judgment, or your judgment of others, or your judgment of others' judgment, or their lack of judgment in your opinion. And where it came from was fairly recently. I was at a dinner party with friends, and the topic came up to kind of more professional topics and such. We all met through work in one way or another, and it came around to judgment and people's misuse of judgment. I think probably in the workplace is probably the key theme, but that wasn't the full conversation. And then I thought, that's actually a very good inspiration to do a little bit of digging on this and make that the next blog and the pod. So it started off by explaining that my interpretation of judgment is the process of forming an opinion or evaluation by discerning and comparing different perspectives or information presented to you. And what I make a point of emphasising is that it is a process. I start off the explanation by saying it's a process, therefore it can be personal. It will be personal to you. It can be methodical if you're a methodical type, and sometimes logical, because of all the reasons that I mentioned. And it can also be tweaked to suit your particular circumstances. So it's not one size fits all, and it's not going to be the same for everyone, is the key point that I'm making there. And it is situational and contextual, depending on a variety of factors, who you're with, where you are, the time of day, the time of year, the time of month, the time of your life, the season that you're in, the whys and the hows at the same time. And then I encourage you to essentially pause and reflect on your, what I would call them, judgment habits, what your typical go-to, your typical default would be, and to consider why that is. Are you fair on yourself? Are you fair on others? Are you hard on yourself? Are you hard on others? Are you somewhere in between? But just take that pause, and I mean it right now, folks, literally. Take that pause right now, pause this podcast, and have a think about that, because this is, as I mentioned, at the core of everything that you do. I start then talking about, I like to do the what is it and what is it not, and what judgment is not an assumption. If most of this happens inside your head with no action, then this part is kind of only relevant to you. Like, your judgment is only relevant to you. But remember that judgment involves having perspectives and information. So if you make an assumption without applying any sort of perspective or using information that could and should be available to you, then that's not a judgment. That's you just making an assumption based on what you think you know. It's not a criticism, and it depends on what you do with the information after you've judged. If it comes out in some sort of critical way, criticism of yourself or criticism of others, then that's a byproduct of the judgment, but not the actual judgment in and of itself, if that makes sense. It's not closed-mindedness. Exercising judgment properly involves demonstrating a level of open-mindedness and a willing to consider different viewpoints. So that means slowing down, for one, and then absorbing everything that you can absorb to give yourself the best opportunity to make the best judgment, and not doing that and assuming that you do have everything that you need to sit and just judge away of everything and anyone, to me is quite close-minded. And a judgment is not true. It's not necessarily true. And I heard something recently. I can't remember. I consume so much information at times that I forget where I hear it from. But I get these little epiphanies. I don't know if I've said epiphany about 50 times on this pod, but I do get these little tidbits and little nuggets of gold that are so meaningful for me. And recently I heard, you don't have to believe every thought you have. And credit to whomever it was that said that. I would never take credit for anyone else's work. But I love that sentiment, because if you think about your judgment is essentially just your part, or a part, actually, just that one singular part of your process to get your what's true for you, and to the eventual truth, what is literally the truth. So I'd just like to leave you with that point of, don't believe every single thought you have, because there's no guarantee that it's actually going to be true. And of course, what judgment is not, it's not the end, and similar in some ways of being true in terms of being part of your journey, so is believing that you have it nailed, that you have it done and dusted, and then exploring no further, it's just a part of the journey that's meaningful and hopefully true at the time. But it doesn't mean that it's the end of the matter, it's the end of the circumstance, and you can just park it and throw it away. It might be, but it might not always be. And I just kind of finish off by saying judging is very normal and a part of a regular part of how we process information and what we do with that. And one key part here that I don't think I mentioned it in the blog, but you are at choice all of the time. When it comes to judgment, you get to judge what it is you feel like judging. You get to process the information the way that you process the information. You get to use that information and manifest itself into what you think is a reasonable and rational judgment. But the key is you're choosing all of this. You can choose to ignore some things. You can choose to add some things in. You can choose to tell yourself stories that may or may not be true. You choose to maybe just be kind to yourself. Whatever it is, you are in control of how you judge. So just make sure that you write that down. And there's different types of judgment types, which I explain to be personas in the blog there. And there's a snap judgment, like making a judgment very quickly and forming an opinion without taking the time or without maybe having the time. And the example of that would be like a first impression. As soon as you meet someone, you might say, I really like that person, or nope, not for me. As long as I can be as far away from that person as possible, then that's kind of cool for me. Values-based judgments, based on your own personal values and beliefs and ethics and such. And you could think something is a waste of time, for example, and someone else would be like, what are you talking about? This is the most useful use of my time that I could ever have. Self-judgment, how you're measuring yourself against your sometimes impossibly high standards, and thinking I should be better at this, I should know this by now, why am I not able to do this yet? And obviously the negative self-talk can be very, very damaging. Social judgment, perceptions based on social norms, societal expectations, cultural expectations, or common stereotypes. Like someone comes into your organisation, comes into your community, and you kind of make a point of saying, hey, that's not how we do it here. This is how we do it here, and giving them those kind of guardrails. Critical judgment, which is intentional to help you make informed assessments, decisions, or actions, like for example, judging a competition or judging one thing over another thing to help you make a decision about how to move forward. You get that critical angle on that. Aesthetic judgment, typically based on personal preferences, whether you like a thing or not, whether you prefer one colour over another, one look over another, one brand over another, or whatnot. And then legal judgments. I was going to actually try and stay away from legal judgments in this pod, just to, because that's absolute and that's kind of definitive, and what I'm talking about here is more the social science type of judgment. But I'll mention it here anyway, which is basically binding decisions that are based on, a person's application of the law or regulation or ethical principles, and basically judgment on a commercial dispute or a land dispute or such would be an example of that. And risk judgments, using your experience, using information that you've gathered over the years to help assess any potential future risks. And knowing that I've been a project manager for such a long time, we'd be looking at the likelihood of this happening and the impact if it does actually happen. That's what part of the process of risk management. And the final one I mentioned is intuitive judgment, primarily based on your psychological and your physical makeup. Your intuition says this is a thing that I should do, or this is a thing that I can't do, or this is a thing that maybe not right now, and such, and just using what you have in your tool belt, experiential tool belt, to give you the opportunity to make an informed, intuitive judgment on whether you should do something or not. So, is there any more that I've missed there? Do you have any types of judgment that you access or experience on a regular basis? Think about it: snap, value-based, self-judgment, social, critical, aesthetic, legal, risk, intuitive. I think I've covered probably most of them, but if you do have other types or other personas of judgment that you use, I'd love to hear from you and see what that looks like. So when we get judgment right, it does create impact, meaningful impact. It can help improve relationships. It can help you make better and more effective decisions. It will certainly help you with your personal growth and provide your ability to positively contribute and make positive impact, by influencing others, inspiring confidence, and contributing to a better environment overall. When we get it wrong, it's kind of the opposite of that. It's going to damage relationships. It's going to make you more susceptible to making poorer decisions. It's going to have you stagnate. There's no growth there, or you're growing in the wrong direction. And it's going to have a negative contribution and impact to what it is you're trying to do. And I'm assuming that's not what it is you are trying to do. So it's important. And then we go on to talk about the 7 steps to improve your judgment. Now, here's a different thing that I'm going to do on podcasts as we go forward. There's always going to be some sort of giveaway that I'll give, because when I do these podcasts and when I do the blogs, they're essentially, the spectrum is probably between 50 and 100,000 feet. It's very high level. It's an introduction to a topic. Hopefully it piques your interest. You learn something and you're maybe inspired to go and do a wee bit more of your own research. So I'm going to actually do some of that for you. So for example, on the 7 steps to improving your judgment, very high level, I'm going to provide that as a downloadable PDF at some point. Now, the caveat to that is I still have to figure out how to do that, and as soon as I figure out how to do that, I'll let you know. So I'll probably have to do a little bit of retro and go back on some of the previous pods as well. But now that I have this technical platform through the Mastermind Business Academy, I'll be able to do that a bit more readily. So it's not ready for this one just yet, but you will get something that will give you a bit more detail than I've explained on the blog and that I'm going to explain to you here on the podcast as well. So hopefully that sounds good to you. The 7 steps are: practice empathy. Just think of the other people, the other circumstances that are going on in and around your judgment. Seek understanding. Always assume that you don't have all of the facts. Always. I hope I have emphasized that enough. Number 3 is active listening, and this is a life trait. This is a life trait, not just for judgment. Number 4, reflecting and learning. Every day is a learning day. Please take the time to gain the benefits of that and the learnings that are all around you all day, every day. Number 5 is challenging assumptions. And essentially all we're trying to do is establish the truth and stick to the facts and challenge everything in a respectful way to ensure that you get closer to the truth. So challenging the assumptions is a key part. Number 6 is establishing or considering multiple viewpoints. just don't exercise closed thinking. If you exercise closed thinking, you'll get nowhere. Maybe not literally nowhere, but you'll certainly not get to closer to where you're trying to be, which is, of course, the best version of you. And the seventh and final one is seeking feedback. We should always be doing this. And the more we do it, trust me on this, the more we do it, the less daunting it will be, and the more comfortable people around us will get with providing it too. And then use that information that you get for your own ongoing continuous growth. Micro feedback is what you're looking for. Was that okay? Was that too much? Did I overdo that? Did I underdo that? Should I have mentioned that? Should I have left that part out? And then, you get that comfort with the people in your circle that you trust for them to say, yeah, you did do that, or you maybe could have mentioned that. But it's in a supportive, encouraging, building up type of way that you just take it for what it is, which is micro feedback to help you improve, to help you serve in a more appropriate way for you going forward. And then talk about, can judgment be learned? That was almost going to be the title of the blog, to be honest, but I really wanted to give you more practical hints and tips about judgment and so that kind of pushed the learning part down. I believe it can be learned for a whole bunch of the reasons that I mentioned earlier. It is a process, it is situational, circumstantial, it is personal to you. And what I would recommend you do is absorb the information that I've shared today and practice. Figure out what parts of it are you're good at, are a good fit for you, and what areas of your judgment that don't serve you in the way that you would like to be served. Use that information for your own continuous growth. And if I can help in any way, please do get in touch. And then I finished off by basically saying, consider how the areas would the following areas I'm going to discuss here would aid your learning and growth. And it's using your education and experiences, and using them properly will absolutely help you. But be careful not to assume that all of your education and all of your experiences are actually going to serve you. Some of them might end up creating a pattern, a habit, a belief, a bias that will hinder you in some way and hinder your opportunity to help you serve to the level that you want to serve. And it's what we can reflect on and glean from these circumstances and situations that is truly going to serve you as you move forward. Mindfulness and reflection. We really should be making mindfulness and reflection a common practice, a daily practice, to use what we know that works for us and mindfully position these things that work for us in our future, like intentionally do that. And the ability to do that is by creating mindfulness and reflection practices in your daily habits. Coaching and mentorship. I'm a bit biased, but this is a bit of a no-brainer for me. If you want to get better at something, get a coach. Simple as that. If you want someone who has been there before, seen it and done it, and they can impart their guidance and wisdom to you, get a mentor. There's differences between coaches and mentors, and I've explained that in previous pods, certainly, talking about what the coach does. And if you so desire, get both. Get a coach and a mentor. If you want to get better at something, there are resources out there that can help you do that. And making this a lifelong process. Almost everything in your self-education is a journey. It's not a destination. You don't get to that point and say, I am now brilliant at this, I don't need to work on this anymore, I will move on to other things that I'm not so good at. You're always going to have to do some work, and that's a key component part. It does involve work. So pay attention and course correct along the way, and you'll get out of this journey that you're on what you put into it. Trust me on that. I finish off with the Coach Gaz challenge to consider a person in your life who you believe lacks appropriate judgment, or a time when you demonstrated a misjudgment of something, and use a specific example that resonates with you and apply your learnings from this podcast in terms of the different judgment personas and steps that I've mentioned there to improve your judgment skills, and just see how that helps shape or influence what you think or what you feel about your judgment. And do you have more empathy for the circumstance? Did you see where you went wrong or where they went wrong? Are you still somewhat irritated at yours or their complete lack of skills in this area? I'd love for you to do that exercise and get in touch with me to let me know what you learned about that. Okay, So that's judgment, and hopefully you got what you needed from that. I did a course, as I mentioned earlier, on the Masterclass platform that is by Malcolm Gladwell, and he's a famous writer. If you haven't heard of him, with a number of best-selling books out there, and it's basically called Malcolm Gladwell Teaches Writing. And I'll just go through some of the parts here, not everything. I'll maybe save that for another time. But the history behind this is I was considering writing a book at the time. I still am. I'm somewhat in the process of framing an outline for that. More about that at some point down the road. But he talks about making the data matter, emphasizing that your thoughts don't need to come to a logical conclusion as long as they're thought-provoking for the reader, having an ending that's different from where you began, or challenged or transported, framing an idea that will make sense to the reader. Don't have them trying to work it out or make it harder than it needs to be. He goes into talking about how effectively you can interview people, and I hope that I used some of those skills for the David Holmes interview and subsequent interviews that I will do from here. But just, finding your subject's authentic self, showing them why they're interesting, alerting them to parts of their life that are somewhat banal to them but very interesting to others, making sure they slow down, that they give you as much information as you're hoping to get. And because if you have a question, your reader will have a question. So putting yourself in the mind's eye of your reader, and because essentially, and I love this, you're representing your audience on this interview. You're representing the people that you're trying to serve on the interview, and making the interviews short. And he says unscripted. I'm not 100% sure about that. I don't know that I would go into an interview completely unscripted. I think that would leave a lot of opportunity on the table of getting nuggets of gold dust and information that what would be gold nuggets. It wouldn't be gold dust, would it? But getting information that you would need. So I'm not 100% sure I would do that. Establishing the subject's world, structuring your language. Your language should be simple enough that it doesn't defeat the reader. Short sentences, only using longer sentences sparingly, and then really honing in on what each chapter is trying to do. Avoiding jargon, words or phrases that are just kind of used inside a world in and of itself that describe complicated notions and allow them to communicate more effectively. Jargon is best to be avoided. You don't get any points for trying to be the smartest person in the room. Your writing tone and voice, depending on what it is you're conveying, is very important, as is the use of humour and melancholy. When, depending on what information it is you're conveying, you want to be able to try and hit the emotions that you're hoping that your reader would expect to be hit at that, and giving them pleasant deviations sometimes from what they would expect as well. And the general approach was really establish why it is you're writing. Like, be explicit about why it is you're writing in the first place. Figure out what the point is and how it's going to clearly make your point, and make sure that you use that as your go-to, as your foundation, especially if you get to a point where you're going through the drafts and the revisions and such, and you're kind of like, I think I've lost myself here. I'm not even 100% sure why I even started that, why that was even considered an important topic, and making sure that you're always going back to that sort of North Star, if you like, or that foundational principle or principles. And I mentioned drafts and revisions. They are absolutely part of the process. Set a reasonable bar for yourself. Know that your first draft is not going to be your final draft, and it's a journey to get to that. And just genuinely appreciate that writing is absolutely demanding creative work. It's not for everyone, and you can tell that by some of the books you read or some of the articles you read, and hopefully my blogs and such, that some of it's easier to read than others. Some authors you just have some sort of, you're in tune with them, if I could say that, and others you're just like, no, that's too much for me. It's too academic, it's too fluffy, it's too pointed, it's language that I don't appreciate, whatever it looks like. But it's very, very demanding work, and I know that, being a creator of written word as we go, and just get it down on the page. As I mentioned, the first draft won't be your final draft. The first draft probably won't be any good, but knowing that you're going to create multiple drafts, you're going to have multiple points of feedback, you're going to have multiple modifications to what you think. There's the book that you plan to write, And then there's the book that you write, and maybe with the benefit of hindsight, there is the book that you should have written, and it's all the same book, you know. It's the same for talking, it's the same for being in a meeting, you know, providing a presentation and such. The one you plan, the one you do, the one you should have did. Just trust the process. And if you experience any writer's block, just keep writing, get words down on the page, edit for clarity. Your first goal should always be being as clear and simple as you possibly can. And once your story, once your book, once your written word enters the world, it no longer belongs to you. It belongs to your readers. So don't waste any time worrying about what people are going to do with your ideas. You're not the police of your readers. And I think that's actually a direct quote, if I recall correctly, from the masterclass. And I love that. You know, once you get it out there, if you're going to sit and bite your nails and fret about, you know, did they like it? What are they doing with it? Are they rubbishing it? Does this enhance my reputation? Does this damage my reputation? Forget it. Once it's out there, it's out there, and people will do with it what they will. He also talks about promotion, and like when he was in the very early stages of his career, in terms of his writing career, he did everything. He accepted every single invite. He pushed himself into bookstores. He did everything he possibly could to get the story out there, and basically just promoting it via every avenue and vehicle until it works. And it works being your promotion works and your book starts to sell. And while you're not to bother yourself, you know, or burden yourself, I should say, with, you know, what your readers are actually going to do about it, you do want to listen to the reviews of your book, and it gives you an opportunity for introspection and on what you've done and how you can hone that into even more better and more creative and more value add writing in the future. Now, he talks about critics, and I thought this particular section of the masterclass was brilliant. I absolutely loved it. And he says, don't mistake your critics for your audience. You're trying to serve your audience. Critics will be there, and their job, like, think about, you know, what the critic's job is. It's to critique information that's out there. But people disagree with critics more than we probably know. And I believe that to be true. And negative criticism is not a universal unifier of a flaw in your work. It's just a representation of one person's opinion. So as I say, consider what the critic's job is, and don't confuse or mistake the critic for your audience. And the reason that's important is the audience are the people that you're trying to serve. It's not the critic. If you're writing it for the critic, then you would write a different piece, I would assume. I certainly would. You're writing it for your audience, for your community. And as I say, I just loved that part, because it kind of rounded off, you know, the approach to when your story gets closer to getting out there. And, you know, as a writer, working to differentiate yourself from others out there. Now, not living a life of comparison. I've talked about that many times before. We shouldn't do that. But, you know, just trying to figure out who is in your area, who are you, in inverted commas, competing with, without living a life of comparison, who is in your niche, and what can you do to be different from them. And, you know, while you're doing your writing, what can make you stand out? Is it the type, the style, the flow, the language, the length of the chapters or such, you know, but just giving yourself that opportunity to not be blind to who's already in the space that you're trying to occupy in the future. And then he talks about how to read. And, you know, people are reading. Like, if you think about the people you're trying to serve, the people that when you're writing an email, a report, a blog, a book, a magazine article, whatever it is, what is it your reader is trying to do? Now, he says the reader is trying to discover intent, you know, and if that's the case, if you're wanting your reader to feel something, which I hope that you do, you know, analyse what your writing is intended to achieve, and then reflect on whether you've actually satisfied that. And you're going to get feedback from the editor, from people who are going to be early adopters of your book prior to publication and such. And then just learn to appreciate what it is you've wrote, learn to appreciate the journey that you're on, learn to absorb, learn to tweak as you go ahead, and then just supply context to what it is that you have written and what other people are going to be reading. And then just, it's basically reconstructing the writer's process is what he goes through. And he concludes the whole thing by saying, writing is an act of service. And I genuinely believe that. I truly do. Everything I write, I get something from it because I get more educated as I do my research and I put it into my own thoughts and style. And I hope that you do too, for the blogs and such that I put out there. And I hope it would be the same for my books. I'll do that plural, so that when they get out there too. Okay, my friends, I hope this episode of the best a coaching podcast even was a valuable use of your time, and that you'll join me for future episodes. If you did find it valuable, please do share it with others, as I'd love to continue to build our community of like-minded people who appreciate this work that we are doing together. And I always ask, have you shared it with one person yet? If not, please just do that. And as I mentioned last time, and I'll continue to ask this as we go forward, if there are any topics that I have not covered yet that you would be interested in, text me, email me. You can get my details on the website. Subscribe to my mailing list, email, like however you want to get in touch with me. Message me on LinkedIn and just say, I want you to cover this topic. You don't even need to provide any rationale. Just if it's something that's of interest to you, it's of interest to me, and I will do my very best to provide you with that edutainment. Don't forget to take a peek at my website, garygillen.com, for previous episodes, previous blogs, and such. And until next time, please do take care of yourself, and all the very, very best to you in your ongoing journey. I will talk to you soon. Cheerio for now.